Okay, then. So this one's come out of the blue slightly just before we started filming this direct, but it looks as though Warhorse Studios has announced Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and it has quote unquote dropped a new trailer, which is looking quite impressive. Alex, going to come to you first of all. Looks like CryEngine is in the house.
Yes,
which is an interesting decision, bearing in mind basically how everybody has moved to Unreal Engine at this point. But initial impressions of the trailer.
Initial impressions of the trailer is that it does look very good. It does look like a continuation of a lot of what we saw in the original game. Less of it in the trailer in like because it's mostly showing off like cinematic moments having to do with the story, but a really big part of the first game was its rendering of naturalistic environments being really top tier, and you get a sense of that at a couple moments, there's the one shot where he's like petting the dog, I believe. You get a sense that like, oh, you get this like great lush countryside there. That's stuff I'm really keen on in this game. I want to see how they've advanced it graphically over the first game when we get to those areas of the game. Another thing that I saw is that the sky rendering looked to be different. I think at least the original CryEngine stuff that they would have been using did not have like a volumetric cloud system, and that was added at one point. I mean, CryEngine 5 or whatever has had a long and protracted development cycle, and it's had some strangeness with it because it's like attached to Hunt, it's attached to the Crysis Remastered games to a certain degree, but we didn't ever really get to see much of it because we obviously are not licensees of the game engine. And it looks like they're using that volumetric cloud system at one point here in the trailer when they show like a wide shot of the sky. But other than that, to me, it looks like a continuation of the great graphical presentation we've seen in the first game. Do you have anything on this, Oliver?
Yeah, I thought it looks very good. It does sort of have maybe this is my bias from knowing what the game is, but it does have sort of a bit of a CryEngine look to it, I think, in the environments and the characters. It has great looking GI. I kind of wonder what they're doing there. The environmental rendering looks fantastic, like you said, like those rolling green hills and the sky and just the way the materials look on the stonework, and it just looks really refined, like really nice stuff. Kind of reminds me a little bit actually of Dragon's Dogma 2 in that respect. It just looks really nice and clean and just very mature and good looking, I guess I'd say. The first person animation also looks great. I'd say, just poking around here, maybe the character rendering isn't quite up to the same standard. And then there's some interesting stuff with reflections, like characters that have semi-gloss armor, right? That's very common in these kinds of games. And you see some interesting like interreflection in the characters that make it look like maybe it's RT. Certainly I'm not seeing any screen space artifacts there, and I'm seeing a level of detail and consistency that I wouldn't expect to see with like just, cube maps, say. So that's interesting, right. And I wonder if they are doing something with RT there. I kind of almost would expect it just based on how good this game looks that they're doing something with RT, because obviously they're very technically competent, and I imagine they are pushing into some of those areas. But yeah, just some early thoughts. I'd love to see more from this game. I'd love to see some extended stuff. This is just preliminary, but it looks really good so far, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, from my perspective, I just think it looks fantastic, right? And I quite like the way they've gone for CryEngine because it does have an original and distinct look to it. It definitely doesn't look like an Unreal Engine 5 game, and yet you're not being shortchanged in terms of detail. Doesn't seem to be any popping of note in this video, so questions about whether it's quote unquote in engine or not or whatever, but it definitely looks the part, right? It looks like the complete finished article, and the lighting, very naturalistic, just looks phenomenal. So yeah, I mean, just early impressions based on this singular 235 cinematic. Just looks great. There do seem to be bits of gameplay in there. Lots of characters in there as well, which is...
Yeah, it's going to take place in an area now. Like the first game had it was a bit more rural, had like some larger-ish settlements, but this one actually is going to take place in like one of the larger cities actually in that time period in this area of the world. And they said they're going to have something like hundreds of NPCs out at any one moment. So this could... I mean, the first game was a CPU destroyer. Rich has used it in the past, especially if you use the settings in the game that allow you to push it up way beyond. Like the game, one thing that the game did really well at launch was have a setting that even like when you clicked on it, it said, this is not meant for your hardware. It's meant for hardware of the future. That was really good to see. And I hope I see something like that this time around. It was a very PC centric game, and the console versions were like okay-ish. I think for what the consoles could do, given the original target specs there. But I'm curious to see how Xbox Series X and PS5 handle this. Like, honestly, I wouldn't expect 60 here, given what the studio's done in the past on consoles and how hard it was to run their last game at 60 on PC. I'm also curious a little bit about the ray tracing. Like Oliver said, last time we talked with Crytek, we talked with Vlad there, and he said basically the system that he designed for Svogi and the way to inject like triangle meshes into that like ray tracing architecture was the way they wanted to go forward. And like the engine already supported triangle ray tracing even for things like RTGI. It's just like it wasn't shipping for a game. It wasn't shippable yet. So maybe they've moved beyond Svogi to RTGI based on triangles. Maybe it's a mixed system. I don't know, but this will be the first time we've seen a CryEngine game in a long time. So that's awesome. And we're going to get it this year, apparently, too.
Yeah, I do remember when this game came out. It was the era, because there's a lot of sort of what you might call internet wisdom. And that particular era was the time where, everybody thought that, that 60 FPS on the CPU side was basically solved. And,
right.
Any decent CPU could produce well over 60 FPS in any given game. And one of the reviews I was doing back in the day was, I think, the 8700K. And yeah, basically this trashed it on the higher settings, of course. And yes, they did actually put in those disclaimers, which is like, well, maybe you shouldn't be using this setting on the hardware today, which I thought was fantastic. It's kind of like a more overt unobtainium setting.
Right. That's great. I like it, though.
I think this trailer looks great. I get what you're saying about character rendering, but certainly environments and lighting just look first class. So I'm really looking forward to seeing more. I'm not sure they've announced a release date for it. It is coming this year, though, I believe. So, yeah looking forward to it.